Welcome, Saira. I'm so excited to have you joining me live in the studio today.
I am so honored, and I'm just thankful that you invited me.
Of course. So I know your history. We've been friends for almost a decade. I'm so excited to share with my audience because you have a special connection with your clients. You have gone through IVF. But before we dive into that, I would like you to take a step back and just tell our listeners about how you got started as a massage therapist.
Oh, wow. That's a long story. But getting back to knowing you for, I think we had discussed 10 years. It's just so wild to see how we've both grown from where we met, which was, back at Lifetime. So full circle, we are now here.
Right.
And I think we have this connection when it comes to the fertility world. So in regards to my practice, which, as you know, I'm a prenatal postpartum therapist, how I started, my goodness, I've been a therapist for, I'm going to say, I'm going on 14 years now, 14 years. And it really started with, funny story is I was in school for mortuary science. So I always knew I wanted to work with bodies. I just didn't realize I wanted to work with live bodies. And just really, it came to figuring out what I wanted. I wanted to be a physical therapist at one point. And when I wanted to go back to school, they had just changed the program to a doctorate program. And I was not willing to do another 7 years of school. So short story is just basically I went into the New York College in Syosset for their open house. I came out, signed up for their following semester, became a massage therapist. I was doing little jobs here and there at Lifetime Fitness. I was a sports massage therapist, which I enjoyed because at the time I was big into running. So I was, doing that. But then when I decided to wanted to start having children is when I realized that there was a need for prenatal and postpartum therapists. Like, no one wanted to really do it because of this fear that's instilled in us as when we're in school that you can't do this. There's so many myths. And when I started, I was like, I want to become a prenatal therapist because pregnant women need it. And postpartum as well. They need that care. They need that nurturing, that isn't out there. So I took a course to become a certified prenatal therapist and left Lifetime and got my practice here in Garden City. And that's been 7 years now in the making. And it's become my passion to basically, it's just so rewarding for a pregnant woman to come in pain and then leave and say, oh my God, I feel so much better. Or for someone who is postpartum and going through postpartum depression and not even realizing it until something is touched, whether it's the hips and they start crying and they're like, I didn't know I was holding this. So for me, that is just it's such a rewarding thing that I'm doing. And that's really how I've been here 7 years. And I'm looking forward to many more years of doing that and evolving a little bit more with my practice.
It's such an amazing story and background that you have. And especially since some of my clients have actually gravitated to you just for a regular massage. I mean, I know you do phenomenal work.
Thank you.
Did you always know you wanted to be a mother?
No, I did not. Actually, when I thought about that question, I had to really dig deep because I was like, when did that desire happen? And no, in my 20s, I was like, I'm not having children after witnessing like my best friends with their kids. And I was like, I don't want to be a mom. And then once I got into my late, I want to say 35 is when I started to have those thoughts of, okay, like I do want to be a mom. And then also once I met my ex-wife, Lauren, that's when things got even more with the conversation of having children. So I'm going to say it was close to like more in my late 30s that I decided.
So that's when you felt like the clock was ticking, would you say?
Not so much the clock was ticking because I always knew, and we can talk about this later, but I always knew I didn't want to carry. In regards to my clock ticking, it wasn't really important because I always knew I didn't want to carry. So I was like, well, either I'm going to marry someone younger than me or adopt.
Yeah. So when you and your ex-wife embarked on this process of two women building a family, you needed additional steps that not everybody takes, like third-party reproduction and sperm donation. How do you start that process?
Yes. So I really had to go back into my memory bank because this was 8 years ago, I think. It really started with, we went to a group for same-sex couples trying to get pregnant. Can't remember the name of the group that we went to. It was in the city. We really just went out of curiosity because we were clueless as to what or how to start. So we started there. We went, we were like, wow, this is amazing. And from there, we just basically started doing our research. And I had to sit down with Lauren and say, all right, I'm going to need your help with this because, I kind of forgot most of the steps. But it was, first it came to researching a fertility doctor, and a fertility doctor who would be open to, queer couple, LGBTQ plus couple. So we got our fertility doctor through a friend of ours who had used her as well. But that's the first step is basically knowing where the steps are going to be or how to start because you're just so clueless. And we went to see her. Then she told Lauren mainly because she was the one carrying where to go. And then from there, you have to look into a sperm bank. We went with California Cryobank. Now, things that we didn't know, because when you're seeking for a sperm donor, you either have to think, do you want to use someone who
Right.
and cut some costs, or do you want to go with a sperm bank and spend the money there? And we really had to really sit down and think about it, and we decided we were going to use sperm donation from a sperm bank, which was California Cryobank. And we just thought, we could just buy sperm and
Right.
whatever. But no, there's actually so many more steps in regards to that because it's basically like buying a house. You have to choose, like, what do you want, what's important for you as a family. And for us, at least for me, one of the most important things was that the donor be an open donor. And, Lauren was like, wow, I never thought about that. And I thought about it because I was like, wow, when kids are teenagers, they can be real, I don't want to say the bad word, but they can be really,
Of
cruel.
course.
So I didn't want my child as a teenager telling me, well, you didn't give me the choice. You didn't give me the option of me, So I was like, no. When they are at that age and if they want to look for their sperm donor, I wanted that to be an option. And believe it or not, once you start filtering out those things, the donor count starts coming down. We went from 140 donors to maybe 10, if that. So that's really where it starts. It starts with doing your research of your fertility doctor, obviously your insurance company, how much your insurance company is going to cover, how much are you willing to spend.
Yes.
And then you have to have a really deep conversation with your partner in regards to the sperm donor. And that can include, do you want the sperm donor to look like you? Medically, you want to make sure that the family and everything is given to you when you choose a sperm donor. Their family's medical history. So you get an entire, it's a lot, but you take those little steps little by little.
So now, with the vast amount of fertility clinics that are out there, how did you and your ex-wife decide which clinic and which doctor to go with? Was it a lot of shopping around and research, or did you settle on the first visit with the first clinic you saw? How did that work?
No, so we had gotten, we used Dr. Rausch, who's in Northwell, through a friend that had used her prior and had gotten pregnant with Dr. Rausch. So,
Right.
And I believe she was one of the first female fertility doctors as well. if I remember clearly. But that's really how we went with her. We met her. We really liked her vibe. And that's really how we picked it. And we just stayed there.
Good to know. How did you and your ex-wife decide which genetic to use, which egg to go with?
Okay, so that was easy because, like I had said earlier, I knew I didn't want to carry, and I suck at making appointments. I'm definitely not the consistent one with that. Lauren is a teacher, and so she's like checks everything, you know. And for our first child, we have two boys. For our first child, we already knew she was going to use her own egg because it was just the easiest way. And then for the second child, it was a little different on our decision, but that's really how it started. We already knew right away she was going to start the
That's
process.
terrific that there wasn't this big, debate and it was a smooth transition. Now, with your ex-wife, tell us a little bit about the protocols. Did you start with IUI and transition to IVF? Or how did it go? And were there any hiccups along the way?
Yes. So we started with IUIs because we were pretty confident that it would work with IUI. So of course we did the calls with the insurance company, and thankfully they covered IUIs. I believe it was 70% of it.
That's amazing.
Pretty
yes,
good.
That's a great coverage.
So we did that. Unfortunately, she did not get pregnant with so the insurance covers 6 IUIs before they can cover IVF. So we were like, we'll be fine. We won't go into IVF. I think you're healthy and you'll get pregnant with IUIs. No, that's not the case. So we did the 6 IUIs. They were unsuccessful. And at that point, we had to sit down and kind of think, do we stop here or do we try for IVF? And Dr. Rausch also suggested just to go to the IVF route. But as I said, in order to get there, we had to do the full 6, which unfortunately means using 6 vials of sperm, which who knew sperm was so expensive? Yeah. It's gold. So yeah, so we, once that didn't work, then we had to decide, are we going to go the IVF route? Which we eventually decided, all right, let's try it once. And Lauren was, open to all the medications that's needed for the IVF process.
Can you give some tips for those couples, same sex, who are looking for sperm or even egg donation?
So I would first suggest, as I said, is really sitting down with your partner and discussing how you want your family to look financially, how you want to work that out. Emotionally, are you, obviously no one's ever ready to have a baby, but when you have to go through different process as opposed to a heterosexual couple, it adds to it. And I think the most important part is financially. You have to really sit down and think, how much do I want to spend? How much of medically do you want to go through? Because IVF can put a woman through a lot.
Yes.
The medication is intense. The needles are, I had to, do some of put the needles on her, and I was like,
did you really?
I don't even know how you do that. Because the thing is huge.
Right.
But really that's the first step. Being on the same page with all those things legally. Make sure everything is legally signed. If you are using a known donor, you want to have a good legal, attorney for that. The other thing is deciding who you want. As if you go with a cryobank, you want to know who or what you want in regards to what your child looks like. Do you want an open or closed donor? As I said, they have an open donor, which means if once the child turns 18, they can go, and if they're curious about their donor, they can look for him.
Right.
There's an anonymous donor, which means you will never know who that person is. So that's something that's very needed. And the other thing is also fertility clinics.
Yes.
You want to make sure that a fertility clinic will be respectful of your choices, and how are they in regards to LGBTQ plus community couples. You want to be safe. You want to feel safe and respected. So those are really the things that I would recommend.
Looking back, would you have done anything different in the protocols?
No, I think everything was pretty straightforward. I would say, to be honest with you, the only thing would be that I would have liked to start younger.
Don't we all, right?
Yeah. But, things happen the way that they're supposed to happen. But I think everything, all the protocols we did, all the steps that we took were pretty straightforward, and I wouldn't change anything.
I admire you so much. Now you have 2 adorable toddler sons, would you say?
Well, 7, almost 7.
Right.
And then the little guy is 4.
They are so adorable. And look at you. You could probably do everything blindfolded. Have you decided to tell them their origin story? Yeah.
So the older one knows. Yeah, he knows everything. He's known since I think maybe 5 or 6. Yes, so he knows. So we have a folder of the donor's information. The donor has like baby pictures. He literally looks like a mini Obama. So we have little baby pictures. He knows that if he wants to look for him when he turns 18, that he can. He asks us, like, how did you, right? Because they're very curious.
Of course.
But you give them the information that you give them based on their age. You're not going to go in with all this medical terminology. But no, he knows. And a funny story is we have 17, we call them dibblings. So donor siblings.
Oh, wow.
Instead of siblings. So it's 17. This guy had some strong sperm. It's the 17. We know all of them. We've met a few, and we gather together sometimes. There's a couple in Connecticut who they have a boy. And they know, this is your donor sibling. And I think that is another important thing to know, because, if you have an open donor, you get into like this registry kind of thing.
Yes.
At the cryobank. And when someone gets pregnant with the same sperm, they send you their information. So like, oh, where does this person live? So, and then there's also a cutoff point for the sperm. Like, they can only donate a certain amount of time. So there's not like 100 kids out there. But no, getting back to your original question, yes, he knows everything. The little one's still small, but eventually when he's like 6 or 7, then we'll tell him the story as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So can you suggest ways for LGBTQ couples to find support?
Yeah, so I actually have a list here because there's a few, but I came down with the most important ones. I wish I could remember the group that we initially went to, because it was a wonderful group. It must have been called like Queer Family something, but I can't think of it. But the ones that are more important are familyequality.org. They offer resources for the LGBTQ plus, who want to become parents. For men, there's one called Men Having Babies.
Yes, that's a great organization.
Then really just your local LGBTQ plus support groups. There's a ton of them on Instagram, a ton of them on Facebook that you can get into. You want to really talk to other parents who have gone through the process, who have children. That's really the most simple way, is finding your community. And that way you get steps of how and where to go from there. So because sometimes websites can have so much information that you get so overwhelmed. But when you can sit down with either your friend who went through it, or a family member, or just anyone. I mean, as a queer woman, I have a ton of friends who've had babies, or I have a ton of queer friends who don't have children yet and who come to me for questions. So that's really where you start.
If there was one thing you wanted someone to take away from our conversation today, what would it be?
Is that your journey is going to look like your journey. Basically, don't compare it to anyone else's, because I would say for Lauren and I, our journey was pretty easy. For other couples, it might not be as easy. So basically, don't marry into this idea of what it's supposed to be, because some people struggle with getting pregnant. Some people can get pregnant right away. I know couples who have spent thousands of dollars trying to get pregnant, and also women who probably can't get pregnant. So then you have to look for other options. So really the only thing I can say out of this conversation is don't look at one person's journey and expect yours to be that way. Everyone's journey is completely different, and yours is going to work out the way that it's meant to be and what your family is supposed to look like.
Absolutely. Well said. So now switching gears, I like to ask all my guests what they like to do to de-stress on your time off. You're a busy mom. You have your own practice.
I love this question. And mainly because as human beings and as parents, we forget about ourselves. And I can speak for myself as a parent. There are times 3 years ago, I had forgotten who I was prior to becoming a parent, prior to becoming, married. You forget about the things that you love. So really just self-care for me, I'm going to speak for myself. I love my massages. I love working out. Working out is basically where I escape. And of course you get fit, right? That's the extra. So that is my self-care, evolving and becoming a better version of yourself. That's my self-care. And everyone's self-care looks different. You know, you don't have to go and spend hundreds of dollars on self-care. It can be going on for a walk early in the morning. It can be going to the beach and just reading something. I love audiobooks. So when I'm driving, somewhere, I just put on an audiobook. That is my self-care. I've just recently learned that I really enjoy taking salsa classes.
Nice.
Wow. So that is another. So it's just you. And every year we are different people.
Exactly.
Right. So one year could be different. The other year, it's just you have to figure out what fills your cup in the end.
Well, you summed it up nicely. And before I let you go, tell our viewers where they can find you, where they can sign up for your amazing massages, where your preferred social media is.
So you can find me on Instagram at Garden City Prenatal Massage. Now, I don't just do prenatal, even though that's the name, but my specialty is prenatal and postpartum. I do fertility as well, fertility massage. But yes, that's where you can find me. I am on Facebook, but I don't use it as much. It's the same name, Garden City Prenatal Massage. But mainly I'm on Instagram.
Wonderful. Well, I'll be sure to include all of this in the show notes.
Thank you.
Saira, it was so lovely to have you here in person.
Such a
Love
pleasure
all you
to
do.
be here. Thank you so much for having me.